Radio. Ta-da. Oh, I gotta update this.
All right. Welcome to All About Wine, everyone.
And update the song information plan. All right, good. Yes, welcome to the show. This is
we're all set.
Pre-show talk that we do 2 minutes before showtime.
Yeah, our chit chat. Mm-hmm. Did you have a good Valentine?
God, how long ago was that? That was a way long time ago.
Way back in yesterday.
Yesterday, oh yeah. Yeah, it was, it's just work. Working.
Yeah, I know.
There was anything much more than that.
1 minute until showtime.
1:05.
Yeah.
5 seconds off. It was...
yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 6 seconds off. I always am. Always 6 seconds. When I tuned in, she said, it is now, 14 minutes and 10 seconds, and it was right on the button. Then she goes, now 14 minutes, and it was like only 4 seconds later, and I was 6 seconds off. And I always am. So, yeah. I get used to it now.
Sure. Almost expected at a certain time. What did I just tap on?
Yes, I do.
Oh, go over here.
And I don't know how it falls out of category like that. I emailed Stephen this morning. I had to go and do tax this morning. So first thing I came in here and sat down and I emailed him. Well, there he is, I believe. I emailed him and I looked and I could
Your
not
show will go
see
live in
where it
5
went.
seconds. 4, 3,
Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
1.
That was quick. Blog Talk Radio.
Blog Talk Radio.
This is All About Wine, the talk show dedicated to the wine industry since 2009. Featuring winemaker, cellar master, vineyardist, and tasting expert, Ron.
Basically what we're trying to do on this program is just trying to educate people and trying to make wine less confusing and more friendly.
From coast to coast and around the world.
We really have had some neat people on the program. I love that.
I was just thinking, if we did do like a live video feed, like showing, where we're at or something, I know you probably wouldn't do it, but I would kind of be open to it. I'd like to have like a big production studio background, just static. So it looks like I'm actually in a big time, something like the NFL uses or something, where they show the inside of the broadcast.
Yeah,
booth.
I can do that. Green screen.
Yeah, green screen.
Yeah,
and I have several green screen things, but to find a backdrop like that, yeah, absolutely. I had that for the when I was trying to do photography stuff. But you could put any background you want. Where do you want to be? France? Okay, good. Let me load up the France thing.
We are live from France.
Yeah. And just have like 150 monitors behind me, so it looks like it. And then the people out there.
Your questions and comments during the live show on our Facebook page.
They could look at it and go, "Wow, there's like 40 monitors. This guy's professional." They would think.
This guy's.
Yeah.
Yeah. All About Wine has really stepped up.
I mean, they've got a professional.
Especially the people who have listened to us since 2009.
Yes.
Yeah.
And is this still playing? Oh, sorry.
At www.facebook.com/allaboutwinebtr. Again, that's www.facebook.com/allaboutwinebtr. And now, All About Wine is on. Here's Ron.
Okay.
There we are.
All right. Welcome to the show. This is All About Wine on February the 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, at 7:02. We have a guest tonight, very knowledgeable guest. Before I introduce the guest, I do want to make a comment.
Uh-oh.
The Super Bowl was Sunday, and everybody knows I'm a sports fan. I'm from Kansas City, and so I was cheering for Chiefs, and it was a good game. That's really what we always hope for. We hope for a good game, not a blowout or something that you sit there and just wait for the advertisements to come on so you can enjoy an advertisement and not watch the game. This was a good game. And they, I mean, overtime, only the second overtime and stuff like that. It was a good game. But then the parade yesterday in Kansas City, and I got home. I was out playing golf yesterday, and I got home from golf. And my wife said, "You hear about what happened in Kansas City? It's parade." And I go, "No." And I turned on the news, and they were talking about the shooting that happened there. Mm. And I was heartsick. I really was heartsick. It punched me, because that's not Kansas City. That's not the Kansas City I grew up in. That's not the Kansas City that I know. And there were 1 million people plus at that celebration. And it was at the end, and people were already leaving and stuff like that. And I think 3 suspects opened fire. I don't know. I haven't heard any more on it, except that's just 3. My sister, both my sisters who still live there, said that they would be in touch with me once they release any more information on the perps. But I don't even know if they will or not, because now the new policy is just you don't bring their names up or anything just because you don't want to give them any notoriety. But I was heartsick. And I talked to my sister last night, and she said that everybody on the news there in Kansas City, every channel is saying, don't define Kansas City about what happened there. And that's so true. It was a good city, and it's not. That's a horrible, horrible tragedy. And I want to say, don't define Kansas City about what happened there, because it's a good city to grow up in, good city to be from, and it's not like that happens all the time. It's not like Super Bowl parades happen. Well, they do 2 years in a row, but I want to bring that up. Our guest is in the green room. He's probably munching down on all of our goodies we have in there for him. Before I bring him out, though, let me give you a little quick biography, a little resume. I mean, the man is phenomenal. Stephen Casscles, is it? We'll ask him how he pronounces his name. Has been a grape grower for over 45 years in the Hudson Valley and worked at leading wineries on the East Coast. Stephen wrote Grapes of the Hudson Valley and Other Cool Climate Regions of the United States and Canada. It's in its 2nd edition, revised and updated. The update includes New England grapes, which details how to make wine, establish and maintain a vineyard, and the growing and winemaking characteristics of over 200 cool climate grape varieties. At his farm in Athens, New York, Cedar Cliff Vineyards, he grows 95 rare French-American hybrids and 19th century heritage grape varieties from the Hudson Valley and Massachusetts, which he evaluates, makes wine from, and lectures about. He also lectures on wine, grape cultivation, 19th century American horticulture, and landscape architecture at botanical gardens and historical societies throughout the Northeast. He is working on 2 new books, The Grapes of Korea. You thought I was going to try to pronounce that, didn't you, Stephen? And The Prince Family Nurseries of Flushing, New York. And we can bring Stephen onto the show and let him tell us more about what he's doing. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me today.
No, it's our pleasure. Believe me.
Great. Okay. So you can hear me then. I'm new to this. So I just want to make sure I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah. You're there. You're there. First thing, the J. What does that stand for?
Oh, that's for Joseph. My father's a Joseph, was his grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. But on our area, I guess what happens is, like, if you have the same name as your father, they all call you Junior. I have several people in the neighborhood that I call Junior who are now like 90 years old. I don't even know their first name. We all call them Junior. So for whatever reason, the first name has to be Joseph, but you use the middle name as the real name. Otherwise, you'll just be called Junior. So that's why.
All right. That makes sense. And your last name is Casscles?
Casscles. That's how it's pronounced. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking so. It's sort of Well, I wasn't sure if it was a soft C or hard C. So, okay. I first saw you, was on a podcast that you did about the Native American grapes, and you were one of them that put your input on it. This was what, 6-8 months ago, I think, something like that. Fascinating podcast. I was so impressed with the whole thing, and I learned so much. And I had your other co-host on the show, and you had pneumonia when I tried to get you on, or laryngitis.
Yeah. We had the Canadian fires, which had all the smoke, and then I got that. Yeah, so unfortunately, so.
So finally, we get you on the show. We get to talk with you. You have quite a resume. Oh my gosh, I'm not even going to attempt to try to go through the whole thing. It's just you have been involved in all sorts of stuff over the years. Actually trained as an attorney, but you've dedicated so much time to horticultural and grape growing and winemaking that it's just amazing. So I guess the first question is, what got you into the grape industry? I mean, you're trained as a lawyer. What made you turn the corner there?
And that's actually my first love. I mean, I worked for the state of New York for 35 years, and I specialized actually in healthcare financing, which is like how hospitals operate, so that you want to make sure that, like, when you want to go to the ER, the lights are on, there's someone there to help you. So that's primarily what I did. But in addition to that, I worked in the New York State Legislature for several decades, and I worked on like laws that affected like how you can regulate the manufacture and sale of alcohol to encourage like smaller wineries to cooperate with each other so they can like jointly ship, jointly make wines and do stuff like that. So I did that in municipal bond work. So those are like, that was my day job. That's how I got a pension. That's how I got my health benefits. So very important. Worked with some very wonderful, very smart people in New York State and in other parts of the country. So it was kind of fun. And the reason I got into grapes was that I lived next door to my grandparents who had a fruit farm. So I kind of learned from them like how to grow fruit, how to make wine, and that kind of stuff. And then where I lived in the Middle Hope, New York area, which is just north of Newburgh, New York, there's actually probably 15 wineries there to this day. And in the Hudson Valley, there's probably like 50 wineries there. So what I did was, even as a teenager, I worked at a winery called Benmall Vineyards, which is in Marlboro, New York. So, and I learned a lot from the owners. There was Eric and Kim Miller were the brothers, and the parents were Dean and Mark Miller. So I learned a real lot from them. So they're the ones who kind of taught me how to make winemaking. So, and and if they're listening, shout out to them right now. So who I still keep in contact with.
Oh, great. You are a consultant for a whole bunch of wineries now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm doing more and more of that kind of work right now. I mean, really, my work has been like trying to, for the longest time, is like trying to grow grape varieties which can be grown sustainably, and grapes that you don't have to spray as often. And I guess more my selfish interest in that is that, like, if you grow Chardonnay, you have to spray it like 12 times of really hot stuff, while the sustainable grapes that I use, the heritage ones and the French American hybrids, you can spray them 4 times or 5 times. That means the other 7 times while I would be out there spraying, I'm fishing, I'm going to the community pool, I'm resting. So there's not only does it save you time and money and the spraying of chemicals, what it is, it means you have more time to do things that you want to do as opposed to doing that. So that was kind of how I got into growing, or mostly growing those kind of grapes. And when I worked at Benmall, that's the grapes they use, because they were educated, they were like illustrators in New York City, but they had lived and learned and were trained how to make wine in France. And the grapes they were using were the ones that they got from Philip Wagner from Maryland, and they grew grapes like French American hybrids like Baco, Chelois, Chambourcin, Chancellor, Saval, Vidal. So my background really is working with those kinds of varieties. And then from there, I read a book called Grapes of New York, which is a book that was done by Cornell University in 1908. And what it did was it described pretty much all grape varieties that were around in 1908 that were grown east of the Mississippi River. So Mississippi River going east. And what I found was that in the Hudson Valley, that there were many, many grape varieties that were developed in the town that I grew up in, which is Newburgh, New York. So it was actually a hotbed for people who were hybridizing grapes from the 1840s to the 1890s. So what I found myself doing was the federal government has a germplasm facility where it's like a grape arc, where you can get cuttings of these rare varieties in Geneva or UC Davis. And what I did was I wrote to them, got cuttings, and then planted them, and they grow really well. So that's why I kind of like the Hudson Valley developed grape varieties. And then from there, I started learning more about, since I went to school in the Boston area and vacation in the Rockport, Gloucester area, what I found was that there was a lot of grapes that were developed in that area. So I grow those varieties as well. So the second edition of the book, Grapes of the Hudson Valley, has 2 new chapters on grapes that are actually developed in mostly Salem, Massachusetts, and the Boston's North Shore. So that's kind of how I got into it. And since my grandparents were growers, they were selling grapes like at wholesale and bulk rate. And as a farmer, you really can't make any money selling grapes wholesale. You have to make something out of them. So I kind of got into winemaking because I wanted to make something out of grapes so I could sell them at retail, not wholesale. So as an example, it's sort of like I got into baking because I wanted to grow different kinds of wheat. So that's kind of how I got into baking, because I wanted to grow different kinds of wheat, and you can't sell wheat on its own. You got to mill it and make it into something so you can make pastries. So that's kind of like how I kind of got there. So.
That's a good point. I never really thought too much about it. But there's quite a few growers out there that just grow, but you never hear about them, and they don't do too much. It's very true.
Yeah, and they're barely making a living. So So I try to grow things like you to reduce the inputs to grow the things, but also grow things that you can make quality wines out of them.
I see. Now, you mentioned the Native American grapes. I am fascinated, I guess is the word, about the Native American grapes. And the only Native American grapes that I've ever been familiar with has been the muscadine, which is, I don't know, I get a foxy flavor, foxy taste to them that I just can't get out of my mind. But yet you mentioned so many other Native American grapes that are not that way. What's
I would say that of the French American grape varieties, which had French grapes in them, but also American species of grapes in them. What they did was they were trying to breed in American grape varieties that had resistance to diseases that were. I mean, what happened in France is that you had grapes that were from the U.S. that were brought over to France. They brought with them a lot of their fungus diseases, so like black rot, downy mildew, powdery mildew, bugs like phylloxera, which actually decimated the French vineyards. So what they were doing in France is they were hybridizing American grapes with French grapes, and they're bringing in American species of grapes to kind of get in more disease resistance to them. So what you'll find is a lot of the French American grapes, what they do is the American grape varieties they bring in there it's like a species called Estivalis, which is from Texas, Labrusca, which is along the East Coast. Those are Concords, Delawares, that kind of stuff. But they also brought in Sonera, Buctriana. There's a Riparia. So there's probably 20 major grape species that are wild in the U.S. But when it came to hybridizing in the U.S. and in France, they tended to concentrate on those that were going to help them either make good quality grapes for table use or wine, or also which would be be very cold hardy, or it would like be able to combat fungus diseases. So many of the Native American grapes that were bred in the U.S., what they did was they brought in grape varieties like Riparia, which are like very cold hardy, or Labruscas, which had like big berries and lots of wild flavors, which would be good in table grapes. They kind of did it that way. So in the U.S., there was a lot of breeding going on, mostly in the Hudson Valley and the New England area, and a little bit in like when Jerry Esterveld from Terravox does it, there were grapes that were developed by TV Munson, which was from Texas. So there were people in the, what I don't know what you call, they said there was like, and I'm kind of ignorant this way, is that they would say that they were the Midwest, but I never thought of Texas or the Panhandle of Texas as being the Midwest. But TV Munson was trying to develop grape varieties that would grow well in Missouri and Ohio and those areas right there. And he was breeding in like American grape varieties, but with some European grape varieties. But his base actually was Native American grapes that were developed in the Hudson Valley and in New England. And then what he tried to do is like crossbreed them and bring in more disease resistance and things that could live in very warm climates like Texas and Missouri.
And also cold hardy too. Wasn't he doing some cold hardy work on it, or is that just
he was doing cold hardy work?
Cornell?
Yep. But he was really doing a lot of time is like trying to like do like really, I mean, hot weather. So like in Missouri, it's hot. So or
it's hot,
in parts of Arkansas, it's hot and very, very humid. So what you'll find is that grapes that tend to be able to do well in very hot weather also will do very well in cold weather because of the genetic material that's in them. So you do it that way.
Oh, really?
So, oh, yeah. And when it comes to muscats, I like muscadine wines actually quite a bit, and that's a different family or species of grape varieties that comes mostly from the South. So that's like Virginia, Tennessee, South. And they're very different varieties. Well, they'll have like canes that'll go out like 30 or 40 feet, and the berries are probably like the size of plums, and you'll have like only 3 berries per bunch. So, and I like muscadines. They have like, it's almost like sherry. It's like very sweet, but sherry-like. So they're not Concordy-like or Labrusca-like. But I like muscadines actually quite a bit. So,
I say it just, if it's made well, the muscadine's not bad. And that's the key to anything. I mean, if it's made well, then it's quite enjoyable. But, some people just throw it together, just say, okay, here you go. And I know I've had some bad experiences with that. Okay. So the grapes you're growing, you have how many different varieties? 94?
I have 94. At one point I had 107, but I'm now 64 years old, so I'm kind of like trying to. So it's time to kind of pick your favorite children. That's kind of what I'm doing. So what I've been doing, sort of like what Prince. From Prince Nurseries, like in the 1850s in Flushing, New York, is like I'm trying to isolate those that are ones that I'm really concentrating on and propagating them, getting them to other people. So there's actually probably 20 or 30 that I'm really keen on. So what I've been doing is like getting cuttings and shipping those cuttings actually to different parts of the country. A lot of it, believe it or not, onto the West Coast. But what I'm doing is like I'm now working with friends who want to establish a nursery in Marlboro, New York, so the Quimby Farm, Jed Radcliffe, which is from Fonda, New York, and then also the Russell Farm, which is in Ipswich, Massachusetts. So what they're doing is they're getting cuttings of the varieties that I think would really do well in those areas. They're propagating them. They have a nursery, and they're putting them in their vineyards, which they're expanding. But also what they're doing is they're then selling them to other growers so they can kind of get more of these grapes out there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we're right now, it's nice that I have 94 different varieties, but what I'm trying to do is make sure that there are nurseries that are planting them and promoting them, and then trying to get wineries to put them in and to make wine out of them. And also, I also work at a winery which is called Deer Native Grapes, which is in Delaware County, New York. So Alfie Alcantara and Dina, they own the winery there in Walton, New York. And what I do is they make they're making great wines out of like the heritage ones like Catawba and Delaware and Empire State. that are doing that. So I do make wine commercially. So right now I'm making it with Deer native grapes, and that's actually someone you should talk to and have them on your show, because they're doing pet nats, they're doing piquettes, but they're also doing like simple wines that are like, that are good because it's, it's a nice environment there, but it's like, it's a little bit colder than it is in the Hudson Valley. So, but they're very nice people. So I would talk to them at some point, but I'm working with them and helping them make wine.
If you will, send me contact information for them.
Okay,
just
I'll do
email
that.
me that, and I will get a hold of them. Oh, okay. You have 94 varieties. Are you just selling clippings, or have you made wine from all those?
Oh, I've made wine from every single one. So what I do right now is, like, for the longest time, I worked at Benmarl Vineyards, actually from a teenager until after law school, and then I've worked a lot on my own. So I have in my garage, I have an experimental vineyard or winery there. So what I would do is, like, I would make like 5 gallons of like many different varieties to see what those varieties were like. So you have to first determine, like, are they good in the field? Will they live? And there's a lot of things that you have to look at when you're trying to see if they're good enough to actually, if they're good in the field. The kinds of things you need to think about is, like, are they fungus disease resistant? Are they winter hardy? That's very, very important. The other thing that's important is that with our changing climate is that you're seeing, and this actually happened in British Columbia just this year, 2 years ago, and it's happened alternatively in the Northeast, is that we seem to be having warmer and warmer falls, and then like around Christmas we get this Christmas Day massacre where it goes to 0 degrees, the grapes get zapped, and then it goes back up to 60, and then last year what we did is, like, it was like the weather in December was like 50, 40, 50, Christmas Eve was like 0, 0, then it was 40, 40, 40, 50, 50, 50 in January, and then we had a second massacre on Groundhog's Day, February 2nd, where it went down to like -10, and it did it for like 2 days. And then when you have like warm weather which then goes into cold weather, it's generally very violent, because basically the cold weather comes in very quickly into warm areas. So it isn't like it's just -5 degrees. It's -5 degrees with 40-mile-an-hour winds, and that just dries up the vines a lot that way. So not only have I been trying to identify grape varieties that are fungus disease resistant and winter hardy. What's winter hardy is now different because they have to be able to harden off fairly early in the year and then be able to withstand being fairly warm for a good part of the winter, getting really cold, really warm, and then really cold again. The other thing that I've been trying to do identifying, and actually I write a lot of articles for UMass Amherst. There's a magazine called Fruit Notes, and then also Horticultural News, which is at Rutgers University. So I write a lot of articles for them on trying to identify grape varieties that are, I'd say, winter hardy in the new definition, which is that they can like withstand being like warmer than average, then colder than average. But also very important, what you're seeing is that, particularly in the Northeast, but also in British Columbia, this has happened several years in a row now too, where basically it will be like you'll have a really warm spring, and then in May you'll have a frost. So the grapes are budding out earlier because it's really warm, and then we're going down to like not 28, but like say 25 and 23, and that kills them. So certain varieties, the ones that I've been trying to identify that are the heritage ones or the French-American hybrids, they are grape varieties that basically when spring comes earlier than it should be and it's warmer, they stay buttoned up. They don't like bud out early. They case.
Really?
They close. So what happens is like when it goes down not zero, but when it gets down to like, below freezing a lot, you don't have a lot of green growth, which gets killed by a late spring frost. So those are the kinds of things you need to do, and those are the kind of articles I write about to do it that way. The other thing that's kind of interesting, so that's the first step. You have to be able to identify grape varieties that are fungus disease resistant, can sustain these weird winters now, that can have a crop after a late spring frost, but also too they have to like taste good. So what I do is at least in my experimental vineyard or winery, what I'll do is I'll make 5 gallons of Le Cornell and 5 gallons of Palmer and Verdelet. And what I do is that over the years, you just make them so you have an idea of what these grapes are like in the cellar. And then ideally what you want to do is like have, a grape variety is like good in the field, that's good in the cellar. And it can be good in the cellar in various ways. It can be like, it can have like a lot of acids that you need to brighten up a white, or it can be very floral and you can blend it with other things, or it can be a high producer. Like for instance, like Baco Blanc is a high producer and it makes like a neutral wine, but they use that wine actually in France, the Baco Blanc, to make brandy. So if you have an Armagnac, it's a Baco Blanc. So it's a variety that's like really resistant, really good in the field. It can make a cognac, a traditional cognac, or actually Armagnac, not cognac. But the other thing too is it's kind of not only is it very, very productive, it's kind of neutral. So you can make a bulk neutral wine and then add other grape varieties like the cool climate heritage grape varieties that are very floral, and you add like 10% of a Verdelet or a Vidal or like say a Valerian, and you add those white varieties to this base wine and you'll have a lovely wine. So because in the end you want to have like not only a good quality wine, but a good quality wine with some kind of volume so that you can make a living at it. So that's kind of the stuff that I've been doing. So again, how do they go in the field, but also what kind of wines do they make? So, and since I was educated mostly by people who were educated in France, we're big into blending. So we're not big into I think many of the chemists who are in the wine industry, they try and control the vineyard to make exactly what they want and only that. And I try and do what I can with what the grapes I have in the field. But if I grow like 20 or 30 different grape varieties, I'm always back blending. So every year I can kind of do that. It's sort of like a baseball team. Like you just like 1 year you think you've got great pitching, turns out you don't have great pitching. But it turns out you've got a great outfield and you got headers. So every year when you think you've got a certain kind of a ball team, and then by September, if you're still in the running, you're going to find out that you thought it was pitching games are going to win you. It's not pitching, it's hitting. And you didn't expect it. So that's why if you grow many different grape varieties, what you can do is, like you say, it's a very different year than I thought. And I thought I was going to make these really floral kind of wines, but it's a big, heavy, hot year. I'm going to be making big reds. So you just have to know how to do that. So that's the other thing you got to do. And that's why I tend to like blending. And that's why I think it's more fun, particularly in the Northeast, because we'll have there's probably 20 or 30 major grape varieties that we use. Well, like in the West Coast, it's pretty much, they're all vinifera. You got to spray them a lot. And it's the top 5. So it's Cabernet Sauvignon, it's Merlot, it's Pinot, it's Chardonnay, it's whatever. Well, here it's like all these weird, wild varieties. So it's a lot more fun making wine, at least for where you are.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You were mentioning the cold and warm and cold. The summers can get quite warm there too. Does that affect
That's the other thing that we're finding. It used to be, for instance, grape varieties, the American species that are Native Americans, but they're all still hybrids. Like Concord's a hybrid, Delaware's a hybrid, Niagara's a hybrid, but the Brusque varieties, which are the base of many Native American grape species, they don't like hot. They don't like heat. They tend to be ones that would grow up in trees and like shade. So they don't like all this heat. So what you have to do when you're identifying grape varieties is that you have to understand that we're having much warmer summers now, and they're alternating. It used to be your springs were in the good old days, whatever that means, is that in the spring it was kind of cool. It was kind of cool and it was wet. In the summer you had hot weather, but it was really 4th of July to August 1st, and that's it. What you're finding, and also it would tend to be dry. What I'm finding now is 2 years ago we had probably the wettest summer we had in 100 years. So,
wow.
Oh, no, sorry. 2 years ago it was the hottest, driest summer we've had in 100 years. The next year it was the hottest, wettest summer we've had in 100 years. So certain grape varieties aren't going to be able to do very well in those kind of conditions. So what I do is with the 94 that I do right now, I do when you pick them, when do they bud break, what's their sugar content. I do observations on them to see which varieties can grow okay and make a quality wine in a very hot wet year and a very hot dry year, because it seems to be alternating on how you do it that way. So that's two. Yeah, again, so usually it was like cold, warm springs, hot, dry summer, and then kind of a cool, not so wet fall. Now what you're finding is that, like the last few falls, we've had it where it's like we've been having our frosts that aren't like around. It used to be frost, at least where I'm from, was like the middle of October. Right now we're having frosts that are like Thanksgiving, the second to last week in November. So what you're having is that it's a much longer growing season. I mean, like when I was so our growing season is like probably from when I was a kid to now is probably about 3 weeks longer than it was when I was a kid. Again, that was like a long time ago. That was like, 50 years ago. But we're having the kind of climate that I have now in upstate New York is the same kind of climate when I was a kid you would have found like in southern New Jersey. So it's actually it's a lot warmer, a lot hotter. So you have to like figure out the grapes have to be varieties that will be able to withstand that. The other thing you'll find about at least the direct producers or these heritage grape varieties and these grapes that are like from from France is they're direct producers. All of the vinifers which are from France or from Europe, they all have to have rootstock because they want to protect themselves from phylloxera and other native root spouses that are in the U.S. The American or these French-American hybrids and the Native American grapes, they're direct producers. They don't have a rootstock. So it's a lot cheaper to kind of plant them, propagate them, but also too, if you have like a really cold winter where everything gets zapped up to the ground level, that means that the plant that you're trying to grow for your grapes, the Zion, is basically all dead. So all you have is, all you have is your rootstock. With the direct producers, what happens is like you don't have that problem where the Zion or the plant above the rootstock is the plant you're trying to grow. With the hybrids, it's all the same variety. So you can still get you can still get buds that come from below ground and still get a crop that year. While with the vinifers, you can't, and then you have to like basically regraft them all again. So that's the other plus about the grape varieties I'm growing. So.
Wow. I know what you mean about the winters and the frost. Every time I talk to anybody who has a vineyard and growing, they always mention that the harvest is becoming later and later every year, and bud break seems to be getting earlier, which sometimes it's a curse because of, like you say, the late frost. But just about everybody's saying, I mean, all across the country, it's getting to be a longer growing season, which I don't know.
It is. I mean, for instance, as an example, there's a grape variety which I use a lot called Baco Noir, which makes very lovely, like Burgundian kind of reds. But this grape variety, it used to pick it like the third week of September every year. What I'm doing consistently now, sadly, is that I'm picking it Labor Day weekend. So I'm picking it on average 2 to 3 weeks earlier every year. So no matter what the average temperatures are, on average, I'm picking them 2 to 3 weeks earlier than I used to ever do it consistently. So that means that things are doing very different. So grapes that would have done well here, 50 years ago, may not do so well here for that reason.
Is that because you get an earlier bud break and it's just still same length of growing season?
It's just because it's hotter. It's what happens is your springs are coming up earlier, so that they're budding out earlier, but it's hotter. So it's hotter during the summer, so they're ripening a lot quicker.
No,
and that's also the same thing with there's like the Minnesota hybrids, which are mostly riparian based. They're made for like very cold areas. So what they do is they try and ripen their grapes in 90 days. So it's a race. So think about it this way. If you're like growing a riparian grape in Minnesota, it's a race against like the winter where it's like sub-zero again. So you want to get to the finish line. So what's happening is that many of the Minnesota hybrids have like riparian heritage, the species in them. So they're racing to the finish. So they want to get there. So they don't care. They don't like say, well, I got time. They're like, no, I want to get it early. So if it's a warm, hot summer, they're just going to get there earlier and just do it that way. Yeah.
And they're happy with that. Yeah. Wow. Is the all of your grapes, all 92, are they getting bud break about the same time, or are
nope,
you
all different? That's the nice thing about them. They're all different. And again, if you Google my name, it will have all the articles I've written for Fruit Notes for the University of Massachusetts and Rutgers, but I write articles on them. And some bud out like a little bit earlier, some are a little bit later. Some, even though they bud out a little bit earlier, they don't like certain varieties, like the Riparias. As soon as they do a bud break, it's a race, and they just throw out green growth, and they'll throw out like 6 inches of green growth, like say in a week or two. But so they'll do it that way. Other ones, even though they come out, they'll have secondary buds that will be in reserve, and they'll just come out for like an inch, a half an inch, and do it that way. So what I find is of the 94, there's some that come out fairly early, some mid-season, some that come out later, but also too, the rate of growth of those buds and the canes that come off, the green growth that comes off is also very, very different. So, and that's why you kind of do it that way. So grapes that were probably you could grow in Virginia, you can now grow in New York, but also too, there's like grape varieties that you could never have grown, like say in parts of Canada. Now you can grow them. So, but they're all very, very different. So.
Yeah, well, I've been reading articles about some of the problems and some of the things they've been doing in Canada. It's amazing. They are taking a lot of the New York varieties and growing them in Canada now because of the weather.
Yep, and in England, you're finding they grow a lot of Seyval now. They're growing more Riesling there. So even in Europe, I mean, the few times I've been to England, they had like a few grapes. There was a few Seyvals, but they didn't grow them because it was a lot cooler, so they couldn't consistently ripen a crop. Now they can. So you're seeing a lot of grape growing is shifting from France to England because of the climate.
Yeah, the lot of champagne being done in England now too. So
yep.
A lot of champagne places there. So it's changing. The grape growing region is changing. Your new book. Let's see. Where am I here?
The Korean book?
Yeah, the Korean book.
Okay, Cheongbuk-do. And that's the grape that's the grape growing area in Korea. And you wouldn't believe it or not, but they grow more grapes or acres. They have more acreage of grapes in Korea than they have in New York State and Washington State combined.
Whoa!
They grow a lot of grapes there.
That's
and what they are is they are mostly seedless grapes that stay there, but what they're doing now is they're starting to actually grow them for winemaking. And the attraction I like the culture, and I've been to Korea once, and I hope to go again very soon again. The book that I wrote was really grape varieties that either grow in Korea or grape varieties that were developed in Korea. And a lot of the grape varieties they use in Korea are actually American hybrids. So like Campbell's Early, Verdelais, and Delaware. So a lot of them are Native American grape varieties that do very well there. But they also did is like really starting like say around, I don't know, it's probably like 1960s. They have a national university, Suwon, where they were developing Korean grape varieties and hybridizing, doing their own hybridization program. So what they did was a lot of the favorite grapes, Native American grapes that I like here, they use them as a base for their hybrids there. So there's a lot of grape varieties like Verdelais-based hybrids, which like Cheonso, and then Delaware, which is a lovely wine that's a Native American grape here. They use that grape a lot to develop Korean grape varieties. So the book is hopefully going to be in print in the next week or so. So it's done. The galleys are done. But what it does is it's kind of like the Grapes of New York book, in that it talks about like who was the hybridizer, why were they trying to hybridize, but it gives the genetic material of like what it was. But many of the grapes that are used to breed the Korean grape varieties are American grape varieties that were used, that were used. So that's why I kind of like them. So what they are is like there's seedless grape varieties that you can make wine out of. So
Right.
they're fun grapes, and they're like big bunches, big berries, highly productive, but also too, they're very fungus disease resistant because in Korea it's hot and it's humid. So they're very,
And it's cold though too. Korea can get very cold.
Actually, it's not. I mean, in the Republic of Korea, it's not as cold as like North Korea. That's cold. That's like colder than you could ever possibly imagine. And in the winter, but the winters in like the Republic of Korea are pretty much like the Hudson Valley. So it gets down to like -10. Like 32, so it's kind of that area. But in the summer, it's hot. But the one thing that's different is they have a monsoon. So what happens is you have to put up like these canvases to kind of protect the grapes. So there you have grapes that are resistant to the heat. They're fungus disease resistant, and you have these monsoons that come in like say about when you pick your grapes, which is like August and September, and they're so resilient they can last through it. So I'm saying like you can have grapes that can live through a monsoon and pick them and make wine out of them. So they're very resistant grape varieties, and my hope is to be able to actually bring them over here and then use those grape varieties over here.
Oh, wow. Well, the only thing I remember about Korea is, in fact, whenever you look up Korean wine, you're always getting flower wine made from all sorts of different varieties of flowers. And
they have that, but also too they grow a lot of fruit there. There's a lot of persimmon wine, apple wines. They have a lot of blueberry wines. So there's a lot of different kinds of fruit wines, and they back blend them. And sometimes they'll use like a neutral white wine, and then they'll put like blueberries in it or strawberries. So yeah, I mean it's kind of like the Hudson Valley in the Northeast as far as the temperature ranges. So you tend to grow exactly the same kind of fruit. So it's like strawberries, blueberries, pears, plums, a lot of cherries.
Apples.
So those are the kinds of. So there's a fair amount of fruit wines, but you're seeing more grape wines come out too from these new hybrids that were developed there.
Yeah, because I've talked about Korea in the past on the show. It's been almost 10 years, but about the only thing I could find was, the fruit wines, flower wines and stuff. There really wasn't a market on grapes. That surprised me that there's so many now.
Yeah,
It's what the grapes that they are growing and the wines they're making from it, is it the same, red and white, just like in Hudson Valley?
Yeah, they're red and white. But again, what they are is they're grape varieties that were developed there, but they have a lot of U.S. grape varieties in them. Again, so like Verdelais, Delaware, Thompson seedless, Himrod seedless. So they have a lot of those. Campbell's Early, Koyo, which is actually a Concord hybrid. So there's a lot of them that are that way. So that's why it's kind of fun, in that the climate's similar, and a lot of the wines that we make here in New York State are actually similar to some of the wine styles that you're seeing in Korea. And I think what's happened too is that you're seeing the not the cuisine, but I think drinking patterns are changing a bit in Korea. So it used to be it wasn't a wine drinking country. It was pretty much you drank soju, and they're also getting into, like as Japan is doing, is they're getting into whiskey. So they're making some lovely, lovely whiskeys. So so they're getting into that kind of stuff too. And what I found is, like, when I went to Yeongdong and met the mayor, and we all went to like a local restaurant there, it's actually interesting. It's like they're really big into French cuisine. So like Yeongdong is a town that is probably 10,000 people, and they have not one, not two, but three wonderful French pastry shops. And so they have a lot of French pastries. They have so they love French cooking. So there's a lot of French cooking. The other thing is, like, when we went out to dinner with the mayor of Yeongdong, is they were very proud. They're also growing different kinds of beef now, and it's like sort of like you'll see the same thing that's happening in Japan. It's like marbleized meat that has like certain grains of like fat and stuff like that. So like really, really tender meat. So, so Korea, unlike parts of China, is a meat-eating country. They love their beef, so they're specialized in that. So when we went to this restaurant in Yeongdong, we had French pastries, we had asparagus and a cream sauce, we had like a beef bourguignon. So we had all French food. So they wanted to show the different things they're doing there. So if you want a good French meal, go to Korea. So it's kind of fun that way. And then and with that, you're seeing much more wines that are complementing those kind of things. So
you said that they're using their hybrids with what's my word? Yeah, hybrids with the American grapes. What are they blending with it? What are they doing? What is
with native grapes?
Korean?
So native grapes that are from there. So like Chungrang is a local native grape that was like a wild grape. So just like they were hybridizing grapes in the 1850s in the U.S. and taking like either European grapes or first generation Native American grapes and then hybridizing it with other Native American grapes that had a lot more fungus disease resistant or had bigger berries. You're seeing the same thing in Korea. They're like second generation native grapes that were from the mountains in Korea, and they used that and then hybridized them with the U.S. grapes so they could get much more fungus disease resistance, cold hardiness, but also the flavors that you wanted from either European grapes or Native American grapes.
Oh, wow. Okay. I can't picture a native Korean grape being much more than just a wild vine going up there that's no good.
And that's all it was. I mean, they were just going up there and they were collecting them, but just like in the U.S., you have like maybe 20 major species of Native American grapes, and 5 of which are used primarily for breeding in the U.S. The same thing is in Korea. So, like, for instance, like species, a dog. A Chihuahua is genetically the same as a St. Bernard. So even though you have the same species of grape variety, it could be like a Chihuahua, it could be like a St. Bernard. So what you're doing is you're going in the field and you're selecting that species that's more like the St. Bernard as opposed to Chihuahua, depending if you're looking for like big flavors and like, a big dog. So you do it that way. So the same kind of thing that way. So they're not all like little mountain things that have like little berries. They can be big things that way too. So, and they just isolate them and then brought them back in the lab, cultivated them, and then bred them with different American and also Japanese grape varieties.
You see, you said they got more vineyards there than they do in New York and Washington put together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something like 38,000 hectares, and a hectare is 2.5 acres. Yeah. So what would that be? That'd be like almost like 90,000 acres of grapes.
Yeah. Wow. And is that all over the country, or is it down south? Or
it's pretty much concentrated like in Yeongdong, and then also the book that I wrote on Cheongbuk-do. It's mostly grapes that are grown in that one province, which is Cheongbuk-do.
Okay. And there's
actually a university that hybridized a lot of them. So I worked with that university. So it's Cheongbuk National University. So, and there's also the Cheongbuk-do Wine Institute. So I worked with Cheongbuk-do Wine Institute, the university, and then what we do is I helped draft the book, and they're publishing it, which will be kind of fun. So.
Oh, yeah. If there's that many acres, how many wineries are around there? I mean, grape wineries, not all these other.
Most of them, there's probably maybe 100. Most of the grapes that are grown in Korea are for table consumption.
Oh.
I mean, there's seedless grape varieties that have big berries. So yes, but even though they are that, there's still grape varieties that genetically have like Chardonnay in them, Verdelais in them, Delaware in them that make like really tasty table wines. So, but most are used as table grapes.
And so the number of wineries is not. We're not.
It's not huge. No. And they tend to be smaller wineries, so they tend to be mom and pop operations. And they make like 20,000 gallons, 30,000 gallons, 10,000 gallons. But they're making some lovely wines. And the nice thing is, like, since it's a a young country as far as making wine. They all get along, they're all talking to each other, and they're all making very different styles of Korean wine. So it's not settled as far as what the style of wine is for Korea. So it's kind of fun that way. And they're making big, heavy reds. They're making a lot of ports there. They're making a lot of sherries. They're making a lot of sparkling wines. They're making a lot of different kinds of things there. So,
yeah, a little bit of everything. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am impressed. I always thought of Korea as just wine made from flowers, and I never.
Yep.
Really
so and they grow a lot of other fruits there too. So like a lot of watermelons, muskmelons. I mean, so there's like they grow a lot of fruit, so they eat a lot of fruit. So you can so any of those areas that grow grapes, they also grow other things like different kinds of melons and stuff like that. So
when are you looking? A couple of weeks, your book coming out?
I think it's I mean the galleys are done, so it should probably be it. And what I do once it comes out, I'll make sure that you can get a copy of it. So, but it's kind of fun.
Good.
But it's similar to the Grapes of New York book in that it does like by each university that was developed in the grape varieties and say, okay, it's a blend of Verdelais and Himrod seedless. And the reason they did it was because of blah blah blah. It tastes like this. It's got this kind of fungus disease resistance, and do it that way. And also, too, the book is in English and Korean, so it's in both languages.
Oh,
yeah, so it's in both languages, and there seems to be some interest there. So the first edition is going to be is in English and Korean, but we're working with people in Japan and Taiwan. And the second edition is going to have basically it'll be something similar, only it will be in Taiwanese and in Japanese.
Oh,
because they grow a lot of grapes in Taiwan and in Japan, and they're the same kind of varieties: Verdelais, Thompson Seedless, the Campbell's Early, Koyo. So they're doing it that way. So because a lot of the Korean grapes also use a lot of Koyo, which is a grape variety that was developed like in the 1930s in Japan, and it's actually a Concord hybrid. So,
is it?
So there is interest, I think, because they grow the same kind of grape varieties in Japan and in Taiwan.
Are you going to have it available on not YouTube, Amazon when it comes out?
What I'll do is I'll work it out. What I'll do is I'll work it out with the university. I mean, basically, it's the university's book. So, and I wrote it, and I wrote it with a great colleague of mine. Her name is Kim Young. So, and she works with her husband at a winery called Sanmak. So that's also in the Yeongdong area. So I worked with a Korean winemaker there. So the name of their winery is Sanmak. And what I did was I wrote the book in English. She translated into Korean, but also but also was able to then talk to the people in the universities there to have them look it over, to make sure it's accurate. They made a few changes that way. So it's been looked over by the university community in Korea, and then it's in Korean in the U.S. So I have to thank Kim Young for all of her help with that. Without her, the book would not have been possible. So.
Oh, well, great. Is the university then publishing it?
Yeah, that's the one who's going to be publishing it. So it will be the Chung. And what it is, there's a foundation that's associated with the university. So Chung-Buk-do National University is, and actually it's a big college. It's probably got 18,000 students, and it has doctoral programs in many different areas for agriculture and genetic engineering. So they have that there, but there's also something called the Chung-Buk Wine Institute. So basically it's being published through the Wine Institute. So basically what they'll do is if you want to buy the book, I'll be able to give people the address, and you write to them, and they'll mail you a copy.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm helping write the book, but I'm not the publisher, so I'll help promote the book, but it's kind of nice. There's a publisher, you call them up, you write it to them, and then off it goes. So,
I'm just so fascinated in the fact that Korea has really jumped up to the forefront of wine grapes. It seems so out of character.
Yeah, it's just something. I think what you're going to find too is sort of like what you found in Washington State. The reason Washington State got so big their wine production is that Gallo got so big in California they had to go somewhere else. So they bought and created Saint Michel. So they created another wine industry in Washington State. And before trying to do national distribution of Washington State wines, they pretty much sold on the West Coast and in Washington State. So what you found is like in Washington State, probably until like say the 1980s, even though they were making a fair amount of wines in Washington State, they weren't getting national distribution. It was staying in that state, and then when they got to a certain volume, that's when they went national and started selling things that way. I think Korea is going to be in the same boat in that it's pretty much it's all domestic consumption of their wines and their grapes. But I think afterwards it will probably change. I think.
Yeah, well, as it starts taking off too, there'll be more and more wineries, which will create more volume for it to be shipped everywhere. And that's a great thing. Okay, well, fantastic. Be sure to send me the information on getting that book too. I'm really interested in seeing what reading that.
And then afterwards tonight, I'm going to get your. I'm not very good at the computer stuff, but I'll get your link on this talk, and I'll share that with my. I don't own people with people that I know to kind of share the stuff that way and kind of do it that way. Oh, one other thing I was going to bring up too is that we were talking before about propagating different grape varieties. I mean, I do that, but what I'm finding is actually because of the hot weather that you're witnessing, particularly in California and in Oregon State, what they're doing is they are looking for things other than vinifera, because like certain varieties that are like cool climate vinifers, like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, because of the hot weather, they're not doing so well. So believe it or not, a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is on the West Coast, trying to propagate the varieties that I'm using, because they're trying to grow direct producers that'll make something like a Pinot Noir. So what I'm shipping to the West Coast is mostly the varieties that I like here, like Baco Noir and Bourdain and Palmer and Le Cornell and Verdelais, but there's a lot of interest on the West Coast for those varieties because they're looking for something that will live. they want to make quality wine, but it has to live. They've got to do both things. Yeah. So it seems to be so. People coming to me. So I mean, there's a lot of interest there for that reason. So
the question arises though, and I've mentioned this on the program before. What's the people out there buying wine going to do when they walk up to the shelf and they see these other varieties that they're not familiar with? Are they going to search for the Cabernet, or are they going to give it a try?
I think it'll depend on the demographics of who's buying it. I think the older generation, they have been taught that they want to have Cabernet Sauvignon, so it's going to be hard for them to change. So they'll keep buying what they're buying, but there'll be less of it because you won't be able to grow as much of it. So that wine that went for $20 a bottle will start going for $40 a bottle. So the question is like you say, do I buy half the amount of wine, or do I try a Le Cornell or a Palmer that might taste a little bit like a Sauvignon? So and I think when it comes to the younger generation, they want like pet nats, piquettes, very wild fruity wines. So they tend to like the Labruscas and Native American grape variety. So like at the winery I work at, which is Deer Native Grapes, they make pet nats and they make wines out of Catawba, Delaware, and they're like big, juicy, very flavorful, very floral reds and whites. So they do it that way. And the younger and people who are just getting into the wine market, that's what they want. They don't want Cabernet Sauvignon. They don't want Chardonnay. They want these like wild things. And also, I'm seeing a merging of how people are making beer, the same kind of thing. They're looking for like wild flavors and Brett flavors and pineapples and like guavas and passion fruit. I mean, you used to never see things like that in beer, but you're seeing that now. So you're seeing like these hazy IPAs, which have lots of fruit in them, and then you're seeing pet nats, which are hazy, that have lots of like Native American fruits in them. So I'm seeing like a merging of the kinds of wines that are being made as the same kinds of things that are beers that are being made. So you're seeing that way. So to kind of go back to your question, I think the younger generation, they don't care that it's a Cabernet Sauvignon or not, or if it's a Chardonnay or not. So they want something that's fun and different. And if it's at the right price point, and they like the taste, they'll buy it. I think you're going to see that. So I think they're doing that, and I think people on the West Coast realize that too. Is like you have to have a good quality wine. So what they'll do is they won't say it's a Baca Noir. They'll say it's Summit Red. They'll just give it a generic name, and they won't say that it's a Baca Noir. They won't do it that way. And just so you know, up until like say the 1970s, it was mostly Robert Mondavi who really pushed that. It used to be California made mostly blended red wines, so they would call it Burgundy, and they would call it like Hardy Burgundy. They would call
all sorts of names
they would
like
do it that way,
generic.
and then and then Robert Mondavi was the one who says, "Oh no, we have to be pure. We have to have a Cabernet Sauvignon with 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, and that's it." But understand, like in France, they don't make wines with 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, so it's actually an outlier that California went the way it did, was like where you had wines that were like made out of like a grape variety, and there was like no tolerance for any blending. So in California, I think it's something like 95% or 100% of the grape has to be the same one. So if you have a Cabernet Sauvignon, it has to be, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's between 95 and 100% of that grape variety to be called a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I think what's going to happen is that because of the economics, is like people, I think, want more approachable wines. They want blended wines like you see in France. So I think when it comes to if the grape varieties that I'm hoping will do well on the West Coast, like Baca Noir and Bourdain and Palmer, there'll be blended reds that will have like a proprietary name, whatever it is.
That's the point
so
you
it'll
were
be
talking
Ron
about.
Hunt's Red. It'll be
Ron Hunt Red. I like it.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Hunt's Red, and just do it that way. Hunt's White, and Hunt's whatever. So, and it won't say like what kind of grape variety. It'll just be a blend of Baca Noir and Palmer and Le Cornell.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a point there that is interesting, because a lot of the recent articles I have read have talked about the boomers, the older generation, that is the ones that are buying the wine right now, and the younger ones are getting away from it. And it could very well be because of what you were just mentioned. They're looking for variety. They're looking for something different. They're looking for something fruity, whereas the older generation is the ones that are stuck on the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Pinot Noirs and the all the classics, and that could be an explanation for the decline in young people, because they're not finding that variety that
it's like fun and juicy and big. I mean, I think the older generation, it took a long time for the wine industry to do this, but they spent a lot of time teaching them and convincing them that, like, you want to drink a Cabernet Sauvignon. That's all you want to drink. Personally, I'm not a big Cabernet Sauvignon person, because they tend to be really, particularly the ones from California, because they have like 16% alcohol. They taste almost like sports. They're like
too big,
heavy things that have charcoal and prunes in them. And they're fine if you like that. I tend not to like that. I tend to like Pinot Noirs, Bacos, lighter, approachable reds. So, but I think when it comes to like the California reds, the old generation, the one industry spent a lot of time teaching them, saying that if you're in the right set and you're in the smart set, you've got to drink a Cabernet Sauvignon, and you've got to have a big, inky thing that's going to have 60% alcohol, and do it that way. And if you've got a Chardonnay, not a clean thing that's got like green apples, that you've got to have a big, huge, buttery one that's like a 14% alcohol. So, and then if you don't drink that, or if you're out in dinner and you want something light, and they offer you this other one, you can say, well, this guy doesn't know anything, because he's trying to buy something other than what he should be buying, which is the big, oaky Chardonnay or the big inky kind of a Cabernet Sauvignon. So it took a while to do that, but I think the younger generation is like, I don't want to do that. So I think you're going to see a changing that way, I think, in some respect. But I think it took a long time for people to be taught, and I think there's wine shame. I do a lot of wine appreciation classes, and I can't tell you times people are afraid to order the wine they want, because they're like, oh, what will they think of me, and blah, blah, blah. And what I tell people is, like, look at beer like wine. When you buy a beer, you don't say, I wonder what they're going to think of me, or how badly they'll think of me if I buy this kind of beer. They don't think that with beer, but with wine they do. So, so there is a wine shame out there, but I think the economics will get around that. So if climate change, which is occurring, I mean, whether for whatever reason, I'm not going to go into those kind of things, but it is occurring. Those wines that you were buying now for $20 and $30 a bottle, if they start going for $60 a bottle, people will start changing their mind. Or else, if it was demographic, they'll be dying off. So it won't matter. So,
yeah, I'm part of that older generation that was taught.
Yeah, I'm the one dying off too. So yeah, I'm the pterodactyl. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying I am.
Oh,
yeah,
I am. Yeah.
Yeah, we're dying.
And I was taught the same way. You know, you gotta like a Cabernet. The Merlots need to be big and bold, and all that. And that was my original introduction to wine, was stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know?
And if you don't do that, you're a zero. You're a nothing.
Yeah.
So,
you don't know anything about
when
wine.
you're in France, I mean, except for certain areas of Bordeaux, like say Saint-Emilion or Pomerol, they're mostly blends. They have, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot and Petit Verdot and Malbec and Cabernet Franc, and they have all those kinds of things in them. But rarely do you see varietals of Merlot in France, but you see them here. And I like Merlots, but the thing is, like, they're kind of, they have, if you blend them, they're a lot better. I think they'll have more of a nose, they'll have more finish, so you can do it that way. So, but I mean, for the longest time, it's like they all had to be varietal. When I say varietal, they had to be Merlot wines that were made out of just Merlot. So, and I think you're seeing people get around that, but it took a long time to convince people to do it. So the wine list is that you can get a Merlot or you can get a Cabernet Sauvignon, and if you want something else, we don't sell that. So just buck up, buy what we're going to sell you.
Well, I think that's the reason you're seeing a lot of the Merlots and Cabernets and all that from different countries all around the world, because they're sold to the United States, and that's it, because of that reason on there. I got one question to ask you before we finish here. The new labeling of ingredients in wine, what do you think about that?
I'm not that familiar with it. I mean, I work at commercial wineries and I make the wines, but that's a regulatory thing as far as what the thing is. But I think it's like whether you add sugar or not. I think, and like acids.
No, it's the list of. It's crazy. I think. I mean, if I may editorialize for a moment here, I think it's insane. How can you list? Because there's so many different trace chemicals in a glass of wine, and where are you going to draw the line, and what are you going to do? But there's a movement to get, if not listed on the label, at least QR code so you can scan it and it lists it there. But I just wonder if you had any opinion of it.
I've heard of it, but I didn't know exactly the details of it. And the people who run the winery, they think about that. So it's like down the line. So I don't really have an opinion because I'm not that familiar with that proposal. So, but as far as like whether you're adding sugar or not, I mean, in France, they add sugar. If they got a bad year, you add sugar. It's like a natural material that you put in the wine. So I think if you list all those things, that diminishes the perceived quality of that variety. So I probably wouldn't be excited about that, I would think. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Mike, do you have any questions for Stephen before we say goodnight to him?
Let me check real quick, make sure there's nobody chiming in at the last second. I don't have anything right now. Just appreciate it, and it was a very interesting discussion. I did have to look up how to spell Chung Buck Dough, and found it. So found some information on it.
And I got to say, it's a lovely part of the country, and it's like, I mean, it's a fun, and the people are very nice. It's a pretty area of the world, and that's just, I mean, if you ever can get there, it's a beautiful area. It really is. So the only thing I like to do very quickly is just to plug the book a little bit. Yeah. If you want to buy the book, you can go to, the Grapes of the Hudson Valley book, and also the Grapes of the Hudson Valley book. It includes 200 grape varieties, including the 2 new chapters that has grapes that are developed in the New England area. So, but you can either get it on Amazon or through the book publisher, and the name of the book publisher is Flint Mine Press. So it'll be www.Flint Mine Press. So if you could buy a book or do whatever, and I say buy it for your friends, buy it for your enemies, just buy the book. That's what I say. So it's kind of fun that way. And also, too, what I try to do is, like, it's a book that's made for grape growers, but also winemakers, but also a consumer. So it gives a lot of descriptions of grapes like Chardonnay and Merlot. Like, it'll say, like, you can make them in this style or that style. Same thing with Stephen Valley. You can make it in this style, that style. So it's actually a good book for consumers who want to know what a Vidal is like, what a Chardonnay is like. And also from a winemaker standpoint, like, you have an idea of what those grapes are like. So if you want to make blends, you know how you can make different blends. So it talks about that. So if any of your readers have any interest in that and want to buy the book, that will be great. So thank you.
Okay. Where is the town in Korea? Where is it located? North, south, east, west, in the ocean? What?
Oh, Yeongdong is one of the areas that it's there. So yeah, so Yeongdong, and that's the county government there. So.
And that's where from Seoul? What direction?
Oh, that's probably maybe 150 miles south of Seoul. So it's like right in the dead center of the country.
Okay.
So
I was trying to get
and I think it's about like it's like 2 hours by train. So the trains there are really fast. I mean, basically they go so fast. Like when they go by really silently, and like they go so fast that like the rails sing because they're going like 200 miles an hour. So like when you get on the train and you see like, a telephone pole, like, and I take Amtrak. I like Amtrak. I go up the Hudson River all the time. Lovely rides, that kind of stuff. When you see the telephone poles, like, here's a pole, here's a pole, here's a pole. When you're on these Korean trains, you see poles and they blur. It's like pole, 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 pole. You can tell like you are going fast like you have never gone before. So like they're clean, they're fast, they're like. But I was like, wow, this is going fast, And then when I came back to the U.S., I was like, wow, we were going like 80. And I was like, wow, we're going as fast as we can. There is like 200, 220, and you are flying. I mean, yeah, you just see a blur of stuff going by you. So it's kind of fun that way. So there was a direct stop from Yeongdong. They'll then bring you up to Seoul. So.
Oh, okay. So it's just south of Seoul. All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. It was very educational. I'm fascinated by Korean grapes. I will get the book, so be sure to send me an email about that. Mm-hmm. And also a reminder: send me an email about the other couple you suggested that might be. Good guess.
I'll do that right after this is over. I'll send it off to you, and then that will be good. So, okay?
All right. I'll get a hold of them, and if you talk to them often, tell them that I'll be contacting them. So,
okay.
Very
what
good.
I'll do is I'll write an email to you, and then I'll carbon copy them in so you can all talk to each other, stuff like that. And it's delightful family. So, and they're doing some fun stuff. So, and again, they're younger, so they're doing the hip stuff, so it's kind of fun. So.
That should be interesting. Yeah, I would look forward to talking with them. So thank you for taking the time tonight and talking with us. It was really enjoyable. And maybe sometime in the future we can get you on again and continue talking about your books and the American native grapes.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that for you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Good night now.
Okay, have a good night now. Okay, bye-bye.
Uh-huh. Bye.
Okay.
Oh, there
we go. There's a little delay.
All right.
Yep. FlintMinePress.com. That was a good website, and his book is on there. So, all right.
What is it?
Flint Mine Press.com.
Oh, Flint Mine Press.
Yep, publisher of his other book.
That's for the one of New York, right?
Yes. It was just on there.
Yeah.
It's down I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. And then I got down around near the bottom of the page. There's a giant banner for it. It's Grapes of the Hudson Valley. It fills my screen here, so it's pretty cool. Updated second edition features 19th century New England grape breeders and heritage varietals. And there is an order button there. So check it out. It's Grapes of the Hudson Valley. And there's other authors on there, but he has quite a bit of a banner there. So yeah, really cool.
That sounds like it'd be an interesting book. I'll have to see what I can do about that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, very interesting conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We update that, and we are closing down the show for now. We'll be back next week. That's February 22nd, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, live. And I believe we have a guest.
We have a guest then, too.
Yeah, we have another guest. So stay tuned for that. We'll advertise who it is and more information. So thank you very much. Have a good weekend and week ahead.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in to Flightline Radio every Saturday from 10 to noon. Listen to Mike live, but anytime it's streaming.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
Flightlineradio.com.
Yeah. Oh, and we're also on MyTuner. MyTuner radio app. We just got listed on there, and oh my God, the listeners have.
Oh, really?
They bumped up like overnight. As soon as they said, "Oh, confirmed, you're on our list and you're on our app and all that kind of stuff," and I got up the next morning. I was like, "Whoa, okay." So it means a lot.
Very good.
So listen through that app, listen through our own app, whatever. But thank you. Appreciate the shout out again.
Yeah,
we'll
good.
Talk to you all next week. Yeah, thank you. See you all next week.
Next week we'll see you all. Have a good week. Be safe.
Thank you. This concludes tonight's broadcast.
This concludes tonight's broadcast of All About Wine with your host, Ron. For show information, links to All About Wine on Twitter and Facebook, or to be a guest on this show, visit the show website at www.allaboutwinebtr.com. Archived shows are available for download on iTunes or on our show page at blogtalkradio.com/allaboutwine. Thank you for listening. Drink responsibly, and we'll see you next time on All About Wine.